Assalamu alaikum. I'm Hussein Baba. Very shortly, you'll be viewing Baba's talk show. Okay? This episode is very, very important because it talks about the rights of victims of domestic violence and also what are their benefits. They can get free legal services and other services as well. So please remember to watch all the way to the end. And also, if you have any friends or you know that who are suffering in silence, please pass the message to them so they know where to seek their help and to exercise their rights. So without any further ado, please watch this important episode. Thank you so much. Welcome to Baba's Talk Show, recorded live in Gold Coast, Australia. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to another episode of Baba's Talk Show. I'm Hussein Baba. As usual, we have a very interesting topic today. And before we go further, let's meet my co-host. Assalamu alaikum, Afshin. How are you?
Assalamu alaikum, Haji. How you doing?
Good to see you, man. It's been a while.
It has been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while, yes. And
very long time since the last talk.
You doing okay?
Been alright, you?
Good, alhamdulillah. Good. Busy with the, cooking for the homeless and all that.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's good.
Good.
And what are we going to talk about today?
Today is a very, very important topic, brother. It is about, the rights of the visa holders, temporary visa holders.
Okay, temporary visa holders.
Yeah, especially in a domestic violence area.
Domestic and family violence?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
That would be interesting.
It is interesting, but many do not know their rights, especially those who come from non-English speaking countries.
Yes.
So they're not aware of their rights. And then, so I hope this show can reach them and they can realize what their rights are.
Yes.
And of course, as usual, we got top panelists, man.
Who did you invite today?
Oh, you wait and see. We'll be back shortly after this message. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. As I mentioned, we have very interesting panelists today. And let's start with the introduction. Well, on my left, I have Samira Mohammed Zadagan. How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Assalamu alaikum, everyone.
Wa alaikum salam. And then Samira is with the Australian Red Cross, right?
Yes.
Okay, good. Now on my right, I have Nitin Ricky, right? Nitin Ricky is a migration and agent lawyer.
That's correct.
And I know your heap of titles.
Yes.
Can you explain yourself?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, look, we do run our own immigration firm,
Yeah.
which is Dream Migration Consultants here based on the Gold Coast.
Right.
In addition to that, I do act as the current vice president for the Migration Institute of Australia, and that's for the Queensland and Northern Territory State Committee. And I do play varying other roles, offering pro bono legal services, so on and so forth, all within the scope of immigration.
That's quite impressive. Okay, good. And then, of course, our co-host, Afshin. How are you, Afshin?
Good, alhamdulillah.
Okay, good. All right. Now, let's go back to our topic. Now, there is one important question that very frequently we hear of and people ask me too. And I'm going to refer this question to Nitin. Nitin, very often people ask me, you see, there are sponsors who sponsor like spouse visa.
Yes,
Now, in domestic violence cases, they're the perpetrators.
that's correct.
Now, in this situation, and usually what they do is, I can cancel your visa. That's how they threaten
That's right.
the spouse. Can they cancel the visa?
They absolutely cannot cancel the visa. It is only a delegate of the minister, essentially the Department of Home Affairs, that has that power to issue cancellations of any visa subclass under any circumstances. Now, it's probably worth noting as well that the threatening, as you've put it, with respects to visa cancellations or to withdraw a visa, so on and so forth, that can be interpreted as family violence in itself.
Okay.
And so it's not unusual to see things like that unfold when you're dealing with such cases.
Okay. So simply put it, no.
They cannot.
Okay, that's good. Now, did you hear that? It's a very, very important piece of information because I have heard in many cases, or many of us have heard, this is how the sponsor threatened the victim.
That's
right. So now you got the answer. Did you get this information? Make sure, and if you have anybody that you know who are suffering in secretly, please tell them this, pass on this information to them, so that the situation know and they have rights. Now this next question I'm going to ask Nitin. What are their rights?
Essentially, their rights are that they should be, first and foremost, contacting probably Queensland Police Services, if based here in Queensland, or if in an alternative jurisdiction, they should contact local police for assistance, first and foremost.
Right.
The safety of these people is, pinnacle to, above all else, visa or no visa. And so that would be the first right that they should be exercising, seeking assistance through the police services and or through the courts.
Okay, so remember, the first thing first, if you encounter such situation, call 000, all right? They are the people, that's the first place of contact, and they will handle from there, isn't it?
That's right.
Oh, Nitin, can you elaborate more on the rights of these victims?
Absolutely. Look, I think one of the main things that people need to realize here is that, even if the domestic violence has occurred or the family violence has occurred at some point in the past, there still can be rights. So, for instance, it's not necessary that legal action has been taken against this person. That's what we would refer to as a judicial claim. But there's an alternative option known as the non-judicial claim, where essentially with the collection of statutory declarations by a prescribed witness or witnesses, as well as a statutory declaration by the applicant themselves, explaining the circumstances with the provision of supporting documents to support such an application, could also provide a remedy in terms of permanent residency or otherwise.
Okay.
So there are rights that are available at all times from a visa perspective or from an immigration perspective, but that is very different than the rights that are available to them from the perspective of, let's say, criminal law or within the courts.
Okay. That's a good explanation, Nitin. Okay. Now we'll go to Samira. All right. Samira, back to you now. Can you give a description of your job? What the nature of your job that you do at the Red Cross?
Yes. I'm a complex caseworker. I support people seeking asylum in Australia. People who have arrived between 2012 and 2014 within a legacy caseload.
Okay. So in these cases, do you encounter people with some domestic violence?
Yes, we very often do have people who are victims of domestic violence, families that have violence in their homes, yes.
Okay. So when we talk about violence, is it like verbal violence or physical violence? What type of abuse? What do they complain about?
Family domestic violence is something that is recognized in some countries, in some cultures, in some communities, and in some not.
Right.
Family domestic violence is any form of harm.
Okay.
Any freedom that has been taken away from you.
Right.
Anything that controls you.
Yeah.
So that can be physical, that can be sexual, that can be emotional and psychological.
Right.
That can be social. That can be financial.
Right.
If people are experiencing violence and not sure, they can contact Red Cross, they can contact the Immigrant Women Support Services, Centrelink, or any organizations to discuss whether they are experiencing violence, or there's online quizzes that they can take, that it will ask them questions about what the experiences are and to what degree that they're experiencing. But domestic violence can have different meanings.
Okay.
Anything that is harmful or takes your freedom.
All right.
Can be recognized.
Okay, good. Now, as Nitin explained, the first thing to do is call the police.
Yes.
So, where do you guys come into the picture? Do the police contact you, or the victim themselves contact you?
We usually have clients come.
Okay.
They contact us themselves, so we get referrals from other organizations. Very often we have, especially if people don't speak the language, speak English, we have a community member or friend contact us and say, can you please contact this person with this language interpreter, and we contact them and do an assessment. But very often clients themselves come forward.
Okay. And you refer their cases to the law enforcement agencies?
Once they come to Red Cross, they can get up to 3 months complex casework support. They can get up to $3,000 support.
Okay.
And they will be referred to organizations, other services for like legal, medical, mental health support, for housing, or any other appropriate services that are to their need, or other emergency relief services.
So in order to get these benefits from Red Cross, do they need to lodge a complaint with the police? Or they just can come without going to the police?
They can just contact Red Cross or the Immigrant Women Support Services, and they can talk about what they're experiencing, and they will be assessed, and then they will be supported. Police does not to be involved.
Okay.
Unless if there's children involved, then
Okay.
there will be child protection report made.
So let's imagine a scenario here. We have, let's call in this case, a male who has sponsored his spouse and the children to migrate to Australia.
Yes.
So they're on a spouse visa. So let's say he is a perpetrator, physically violent to the spouse, and then the spouse found out your information, they contact you directly.
Yes.
And then from there, how it works. I'm just trying to figure out the modus operandi, how you handle these cases.
Yes.
Right?
So they will be going under an assessment.
Okay.
If they don't speak English, there will be interpreters.
Right.
If they can speak English, they will do just an assessment to see what form of abuse they're experiencing and to how severe.
Right.
And then they will be supported in that way by complex casework, referral pathways.
Okay. So what happened to the children in this case? Do they still stay with the mother?
It depends who is the safest.
Okay.
But that's a decision that the police and child protection makes.
But you make an assessment of that as well, right?
Yes.
But okay.
So if we see if there's any form of harm to the children, which
Yes.
obviously at all cases there is, we have to make a child protection report.
All right. Okay. Now, Afshin, do you have any question to us?
I do have a few questions to ask actually.
Maybe go one by one first.
So, because you said that you work with asylum seekers, main question, because you asked about the rights of TPV or temporary visa holders,
Right.
and they did have rights
Right.
from the government and get some stuff. But what about the asylum seekers? Do they have any rights in this kind of situation, in the domestic family violence? I'm asking both of you. I don't know who can answer this question.
I think Nathan, you start first.
Yeah, look, from that perspective, I think it's worth noting that the family violence provisions only extend to certain visa subclasses, right? And generally speaking, at this moment in time, they relate to certain legs of certain types of partner visas, okay? So you've got your subclass 300, which is your prospective marriage. So if a subclass 300 visa holder has entered into Australia, has married their Australian partner, and has then subsequently lodged the onshore 820/801, those family violence provisions are available to them. If someone has applied for an onshore partner visa, subclass 820, or have been granted the 820, those rights are available to them. And then your third option is if somebody has been granted a 309 visa, which is your offshore partner visa, and has since entered into the country and has then subsequently been a victim of family violence, then in that circumstances, it would be available to them as well. Unfortunately, that is the limit, however. Now, there have been discussions, as I understand, as to perhaps broadening that, but unfortunately, there's no real information that I would have, to be able to provide at this time.
Now, Samira, I'd like to know, in most of the cases that you handle, the victims, are they aware of their rights? I mean, I know some of them may not be speaking English and all that, but do they know their rights when they come to see you?
No, very often clients don't even know that they're in a family domestic violence situation because culturally, in their country, this is acceptable. But when people come to Australia who are sponsored, they don't get complex casework support long term. They don't get that education around the system. They don't get that support to know, to check up on them. And due to that, most of the times they don't know their rights.
Okay. So do you think there's a room for improvement, let's say by government-sponsored education, educating their rights?
Absolutely. I think people who get sponsored here should have the same right and should get casework support, should be educated around the system. I know of a case where this lady lived most of her life in a family domestic violence. She was locked inside the house. No one checked up on her. She was just sponsored. It's the guy's responsibility or the sponsor's responsibility to look after them. So this lady lived in a family domestic violence situation for most of her life, and there was no support for her. There's no education for her whatsoever until a community member found out and reached out to us. So very often they don't even know what family domestic violence is, let alone what their rights are as a sponsors, as being sponsored to.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay, that's very sad, isn't it?
Yeah.
You must be getting quite a number of cases in such situation who are not aware of their rights and continually getting abused by the perpetrator.
Yes.
Oh, that's very sad. Very sad. Yeah. Afshin, would you like to follow up a question on that?
Follow-up question on that. What can we do? Like, as a community leader, I represent two different communities, but the Muslim community and the African communities on the Gold Coast. But what can we do to actually pass on this information and educate people? Like, we've been in this working in DV probably for the past 8-9 years. We're involved with the police. We've been to different things, developing policies, working with clients, cases, and all that. And yes, this is a situation. Usually people don't know their rights and what they can do and what domestic family violence is.
Yeah.
Like, what can we do? How can we actually pass this information to our communities?
So, Nitin, can you answer this, please?
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, when you run into one of these temporary visa holders or someone who has applied for one of these visas, they need real immigration assistance. And that means referring on to perhaps Migration Institute of Australia. They've got a website of a bunch of practitioners that might be available locally or in the area. You can look at the Law Society's website. You can check the UMARA's website. And this shows, essentially there are people that are practitioners in these areas who can explain the complexities of the law. Because that's obviously creating that awareness, because that is, it's not an easy thing to advise on. There are things that you can pass on, some relevant information, but how do you circumvent the law not circumvent the law, but how do you navigate throughout the law, to adequately put in the correct application is where the difficulty arises. Now, the first thing that, we would normally do in our practice, anytime we see any partner visa coming through, we always advise in advance that, look, these are your rights. So for instance, if you are a victim of family violence, or if there's a child born in a relationship, or the sponsor dies while this is processing, you should contact us and let us know immediately, because there might be alternative options available to you. And I think that's something that perhaps there may, we could benefit from further education in that area. And it's the reason why our practice emphasizes that, as our best practice.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Now, just a question came up just now. Now, while this couple is going through this scenario,
Yes.
right? And they said, okay, the perpetrator and the sponsor said, I want to divorce you.
Yes.
Finish off this. Is there any protection for the victim?
The divorce per se does not have any bearing on the application. The question really is, was this victim a true victim of family violence whilst that relationship was in existence?
Okay.
And that could date back. So for instance, it's not unusual for someone to approach our office and say, look, our relationship dissolved 3 months ago for these reasons. And if it's determined that it was because of family violence, then there could be options available.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. And it could also happen after the fact, meaning that the sponsor will often go and report that the relationship has ceased to the Department of Home Affairs. At which time the department would then contact the visa applicant and advise of options which may be available, and also seek essentially a response from that visa applicant as to, look, this is what we've received. Do you have any response or information you want to provide?
Okay.
And if that occurs, as long as they've received the correct immigration assistance, someone like, myself would step in and advise the department to be like, wait, hold on here for a second, please. We've been advised that there's a family violence issue here. We will bring forth a claim. If you could kindly hold off, no cancellations, please don't, revoke. And please don't make a decision until such time we bring forth that application.
Okay.
And the department is very willing, to assist in those circumstances.
Okay. Let's assume there's a case.
Yes.
They want to approach you.
Yes.
The victim doesn't have any money.
Absolutely.
Then what happened in this case?
Well, we've got other alternatives. So essentially, you've got here on the Gold Coast, you've got St. Vincent de Paul, you've got My Community Legal.
Right.
If you're in the Brisbane area, you've got Rails. Essentially, there are government funded organizations that are available to offer pro bono legal services.
Okay.
And in fact, that is something that I assist with as well. So it's not unusual for a client to approach us and say, well, look, you know, and we can give them the assistance and the initial advice required.
Right.
But if you know, after providing a quote of professional fees, if it's not feasible, well, then we can refer them onwards.
All right. Now you heard it from the lawyer, right? So if you are in such situation, don't hesitate. Don't worry about lawyers' fees, because there are a couple of lawyer firms in Gold Coast as well in Brisbane who will do the service for you on pro bono basis, basically free. And they'll take up your case and refer to maybe groups like Red Cross and the various other organizations. They're available in Gold Coast as well as wider Queensland. So remember that if you are the victim, there is help. So don't hesitate. Okay? Wow. Some of this information are fairly new for me. I mean, imagine for those victims out there who doesn't know anything about this, and finally, through Baba's talk show, you can understand your rights. So don't hesitate to exercise your rights. You have rights. Australian government has given you these rights. The only thing is you need to find out this information. And where's the best way to find out this information apart from Baba's talk show?
Look, I think first and foremost, as I mentioned before, it's you need to find a practitioner who's licensed to provide such advice when it comes to visas, which essentially is going to be a migration agent or a immigration lawyer. And you can find those details through the Migration Institute of Australia's website, through the Office of the Amara, or from the Law Society. And you'll find there's search bars. You can, you know, look at location. You can look at areas of practice as well. So you can find a practitioner who specializes in this, because it is a niche area.
So Nitin, you're already providing this service, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they can contact your organization, which is Dream
Migration. That's correct.
Okay.
And we're based here on the Gold Coast. And we often handle many of these cases. And you know, it's not unusual for someone to not know that they're a victim as well. And so sometimes it is worthwhile, you know, just seeking that advice, you know. But the main thing is, you know, immigration assistance in advice, which this is not, you know, this is very generic in nature. But it's very important that they seek advice and assistance that is relevant to their specific circumstances.
That's right.
Because no one case is ever going to be the same.
No, identical, So similarly, they can also go to Red Cross, right? They can go to Red Cross and their offices like you. You guys are based in Brisbane. Do you have office in Gold Coast?
No, in Milton.
Okay. Of course, you can contact the Red Cross and you'll get the contact details below this video. And in case if you want to contact Nitin, also you'll get the details below this video.
What can we do to actually educate the people in our communities, because they don't know their rights and about their rights? Look, one of the things I heard about Red Cross recently was last week. We were in the same meeting, right?
Yes, that's right.
That Red Cross like $3,000 budget, or they actually help any domestic violence victim. And I'm pretty sure that's regardless of their visa type, what visa they're holding, is to get that help and support. So after 9 years, I learned this last week. So what I'm talking about when I said educating people, like we've been working in this area and it's in this, but I did not know about this, and I've just learned this. I'm not sure how long they've been doing this. So what we can do to educate our people? When we're going to talk about domestic violence and domestic family violence, the victim, the right of victims, or the perpetrators.
So just before Samir asks the question, it's a very important thing, because as community leaders in the Islamic community, I'm just talking about the Gold Coast. There are 15,000 Muslims residing in the Gold Coast from 60 different cultural backgrounds. So sometimes they ask this, they're not aware of this information. And so even like what he said about the $3,000, I came to know recently. You know, so this is what he's saying is a very important question. If we take so long to get this information, what about the people who are really suffering?
Absolutely.
So this is why, that's what I was asking, is it a matter of education, or is it a lack of government promoting or campaigning their rights? So, and last week, I think you attended one of these seminars.
That's right.
Right, both of you attended seminars. So do you think we should have more of those seminars
But those seminars again is for us.
Oh,
See, the thing is, like that's why I'm asking, like, because we do, like, I'm part of an organization, you part of a migration agency, and then you work with Red Cross. Like, I've done my best to actually educate my people. I'm like, what can I do? What more can I do? How can we pass on this information to people?
Any suggestion?
How can we educate people and get them ready before, so they know they've got rights, or they know they can come to you in Red Cross, come to me in my organization, come to you in your organization. What can we do?
I strongly believe that this topic should be more discussed in communities. You know, like if you're a Muslim in the mosque, if you're a Christian at the church, in your religious places, in your communities, it should be discussed more for people to get that education, because some people only have access to those areas. In terms of Red Cross is supporting people who are at risk or are experiencing family domestic violence, and they do have time period for the $3,000, up to $3,000 support. I think one of the most important thing is also to recognize is that sometimes the perpetrators are actually victim themselves. You know, sometimes perpetrators have grown up in families where it has been a common practice for, I don't want to stereotype, but usually dad beating up mum. You know, that form of abuse is something very normal, and even in their own community, that's something very normal. So what is their support for people who practice that? You know, I think it should be very open for them to feel not judged, and also be protected if they stand up and say, you know, I can't manage my anger, I can't control myself. When I get angry, I lose it.
Right.
And they should get support from, like, again, if it's a Muslim, from the imam, from the mosques, from elders in their communities.
Right.
Or the general community. Unfortunately, there's there's lack of resources and information that would support perpetrators.
That's true.
It's very unfortunate.
Right.
But they should be getting that education and that support from their community as well. And the community leaders should encourage that.
Okay. Samira, that's good. Having said that, would you suggest, like, for example, your organization, Red Cross, like, come to an Islamic center?
Yeah.
And then provide this information, like how the government did with us, for the leaders of the community?
Yes.
Can we invite maybe organization or the organization come to the community center and then do a seminar on this issue? Do you have this manpower to do?
The FTV program is separate to the program that I'm working in, but I'm pretty sure they would be happy to provide that education and get that to.
So that would be something where we can disseminate information through the religious organization. As you know, Afshin is also part of an organization called MAG, where you have all these interfaith members together, and maybe they can have a group from, let's say, Red Cross, meet them and explain about these rights, so they can disseminate this information to their members. But in our case, we have a fairly large organization, so they can come directly to the mosque, or we choose one day, and then explain the situation. They can go to a church, or they can go to synagogue or Buddhist center, wherever they're invited, right? That would be good. So that's way to overcome. Now, I don't know whether it's silly to mention this. When a sponsor apply what you call a sponsor visa for the spouse, shouldn't the immigration department say, fix up a time, come here to our office, these are your rights? Is there something that they can look into?
Well, look, actually, a lot of the correspondence that you would receive or an applicant can expect to receive will have quite a bit of information regarding family violence, not just available on some of the actual correspondence that they send through, but it's also available on the department's website. It is readily available. I suppose the issue comes down to language barriers, right? Can they actually read what's there? Now, that's really why it's important for practitioners such as myself,
Yes.
to go above and beyond to ensure that they are aware of those rights in advance. You can't sort of react to that.
Right.
You must almost be proactive
Yeah.
in that regard to really eliminate or at least reduce this issue. And so you're absolutely correct.
Yeah.
And I do feel like it shows like this, and these sorts of efforts that does create that awareness. And
Right.
the idea of coming into religious organizations or other community-based organizations to have these discussions with smaller groups that can then convey that
Right.
to other members of the community, it's essential. Absolutely.
Right. Now, just quick, when the applicants, of course, they come through the lawyers, right? Now, when the sponsor visa, they have to come to you. So do you mention, you had the couple in front of you?
Every single time. Every single couple.
And then you openly tell them, this is your right? Like,
Absolutely.
the first one is, he can't cancel your visa in case of domestic.
That's
Okay.
correct. That's correct. And sometimes it can make for an uncomfortable conversation during an initial consultation. But I'd rather a visa applicant be aware of their rights,
Right.
rather than endure the abuse for X amount of years moving forward.
That's right.
I'd rather have that uncomfortable conversation up front.
Good. Now that is I was not aware of, so I want to know. Now, can this step be taken up by a government agency, or they've outsourced to the lawyers?
Look, I think everybody's playing their part, right? And so I was at another event last week as well, where the Department of Home Affairs did present, and they are starting to they have created a family violence section now, which they are seeking to continue to expand. It's relatively new, but it's an amazing effort on the department's part to really create that awareness.
Okay, so that's good. So at least steps have been taken.
Absolutely.
To campaign, educate the spouse visa holders. That's good.
Mind you, I must say, like, in the last 9 years, I've seen a lot of development, like where we were in terms of the policies, the rules, what was happening, and the situation, the number of cases, or even the awareness of it to now. Like a lot of development has happened. Like a lot of people have learned a lot more. You can see the government agency actually do a lot of things about it, like, and other organizations getting involved as well. But I'm not sure if it's enough.
Okay.
Is it? Because you're a complex caseworker. So what do you see the most? What are the most complex cases you see in terms of domestic violence? Like, what kind of situation? What kind of families? Is there anything that is common between amongst all of them?
Physical abuse and financial abuse is one of the biggest that is ongoingly reported. But that's to keep in mind that mental and emotional psychological abuse is not something that even recognized. And other forms of abuse can be private, so it's very less likely to be reported. But physical and financial, specifically financial abuse, is something very significant because, like, I brought you to Australia, I'm feeding you, I'm the provider. So I have that ownership over you. That's something that is continuously reported.
She knows her right, or in this case, she knows her right, but she doesn't want to go to authorities.
Yes.
Because this will bring an embarrassment to a whole extended family, not to her immediate family and extended family. That's a cultural thing.
Yeah.
That's very sad. Very,
Absolutely.
very sad. How can you help them in this case?
Well, I mean, from our perspective, the department has thought of this, and that really is the non-judicial claim. So a non-judicial claim can be made. And is again, we inform the department that a family violence claim will be made, except we do not go to the authorities, and so the police are not involved. There's no court orders made. But they do need to seek expert assistance, whether it be a clinical psychologist, general practitioner, nurse, police officer. There's a list of prescribed people, and they need to get support. Those people have to seek treatment. And if those professionals determine that, yes, in accordance with our views and our professional opinions, this person has been victimized, then we can still put forth an application on those grounds. And in fact, that's probably the most common application that we will put forth. Is those more complex non-judicial claims.
Okay, that's good. Samira, do you have any last words to add?
I really encourage all victims to stand up for themselves and seek support if they think that they are at risk or are experiencing family domestic violence. And I really do encourage all perpetrators to seek support from their communities and from their religious places or from organization, from counseling. I think That's something very essential, not only for the victim but also the perpetrator. So I do really encourage both to stand up and get support to protect their families and be safe.
Good, very good. What about Nitin?
Absolutely, I agree. Just as Samira said, first and foremost, seek assistance from the police services if required. If you are a temporary visa holder or have only recently applied for a visa, you should speak to an immigration professional because they can give you guidance and assistance and advice as to how to navigate through the law.
Okay, good. Afshin?
I think what I'm going to take from this discussion, what Samira said, our religious leaders have a good role in this and a very important one, to open this discussion and have these talks and chats with our communities, in mosques, in church, in our temples, in any temples you can think. But I think they should do it because I don't hear it enough in the mosque. Do you?
No, not at all. So that's why I suggested we can invite agencies to come over, government agencies or Red Cross or other agencies to come and explain. We can have a seminar and then we can invite people to come and listen, and even those victims are not prepared to come, they will have some friends who will be there who can pass on the message, right? Because they have their own network, communication network. Well, we are almost nearing the time, and thank you so much. That was a good piece of information. We learned a lot ourselves, right, Afshin?
Yes.
We learned a lot, and I'm sure audience out there also got this information. Many of you do not know the information that we got to Samira and Nitin. Thank you so much. And maybe in the near future, we might do another show to discuss these people. What we really hope is that there are less cases. Let's hope there's less cases. And number two, try to educate yourself with your rights. This is most important. Okay? All right. Thank you so much, Samira, Nitin, and Afshin. And well, you got the information now, so don't be afraid. You have your rights, okay? If you don't speak English, no problem. There are interpreters in different organizations who can help you. And of course, like Nitin explained, please call the law enforcement agency, call the police, okay, for help, okay? That telephone number is 000-000. All right. Thank you so much. We see you next time. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.